LeBron James posted a rather inflammatory Instagram message about Lori Loughlin and her being getting special treatment and being sentenced to a prison or being able to choose her own prison. The reality is that's not special privilege. That's actually the BOP's policy. If you look at the Bureau of Prisons, it's really a large bureaucracy, and it's driven by policy statements. And those policy statements indicate that every person has a right to be within 500 miles of his release destination or his family. And there's a reason for that. Because if people are serving time in prison, we want those people to be cultivating relationships with their families and their friends and their potential employers, and we want them to be thinking about how to emerge successfully. Well, Lori Loughlin's a human being. She's a citizen, and she lives in California, so it is reasonable that she would have requested that she be placed within 500 miles of her family. There happens to be 2 prisons in that area. One of them is the female women's camp in Victorville, California. The second is in Dublin, which is a little bit farther away in the Bay Area, the East Bay of San Francisco. I think it's still within 500 miles. But the point is that she didn't get any special treatment. And I saw this Instagram point. Actually, my partner, Justin Paperny, pointed it out to me that LeBron James posted this Instagram. It was just really inflammatory and trying to turn it into almost a racial issue. But it's not. It's a policy statement that's well-rooted. And I went to prison in 1987. And at the time that I went to prison back then, it was still the policy. You were supposed to be within 500 miles of your home. In fact, I was locked up in the penitentiary in Atlanta because I was locked up in the penitentiary because they said that my home was in Miami. My home was actually in Seattle, but the policy required me to be there. So it took me quite a bit of maneuvering to get my home switched back to the West Coast, and it took me 17 years to get to the West Coast. But it's not a racial thing. It is just a part of the bureaucracy. So I'm aware that there are a lot of injustices in our justice system. I'm aware that there is institutional racism in many aspects of American society. I've been writing about that in many of my books for many years. This isn't one of them. And I empathize with anybody who's going into the prison system, including Lori and her husband and all of the other people that were wrapped up in this varsity blues things. What they did is, questionable whether prison is the right response for it. Just by making somebody else suffer, that doesn't make it right for all the other people that are in prison serving sentences that are far too long, and they have few mechanisms for relief. Our job at Prison Professors is to try and help more people understand the system and understand how can they get best outcomes from it. How can somebody who's going into the system position themselves for the best possible release opportunity, the easiest possible time? What can that person do today to begin preparing in ways that will allow them to come back to society strong, with their dignity intact, ready to function as a law-abiding citizen and not as a pariah? And I don't think LeBron James does anyone's service by using his fame and notoriety by making it look like this is a racial thing. I saw even 50 Cent, the famous rapper, wrote "Seems About White," playing off of "Seems About Right." But that's not the way it is, right? Anybody that goes into the prison system, in the rap culture, they say anyone can get it. I remember that from some of my rapper friends when I was in prison. They say anyone can get it. Well, it's the same thing in this culture of mass incarceration. Anyone can get wrapped up to this. That's why we're launching this new phase of our business that really focuses on government investigations and how government investigations can bring people in as either witnesses to investigations, subjects of investigations, or become targets of investigations. And right behind me, you see I'm Billionaires Row in New York City, where we've worked with a lot of people who run businesses, but those people that are running businesses don't understand how business decisions can lead them into the crosshairs of government investigators, because those people are trophies. And there are going to be government attorneys. They're going to want to build careers on taking down people who have been, entrepreneurs and created jobs and built businesses. And those government investigators aren't really in the business of making anything great. What they're in the business of doing are tearing things down. And we want to help, entrepreneurs and business owners, whether you are running a business that's doing $2, $3, $4 million in revenues, or you're building a business that's doing $100, $200, $300 million in revenues. Do you know how easily you can get wrapped up into a government investigation? Do you know how easily the team that you are supervising and hiring can make some decisions on the job that can result in them coming into a government investigation? And if they do get brought into a government investigation, what do you have to protect yourself? In what ways can you protect yourself? Because when those people get approached by government lawyers, they get scared, and rightfully so, because those government lawyers are incredibly intimidating, and they will threaten the possibility of, great financial harm, enormous stress, and bring people into a system that they don't belong. But that's the way these are the outgrowths of our nation's commitment to mass incarceration. It is a system that needs to be fed, and it gets fed with leads. And those leads result in government attorneys launching investigations. I'm going to give you an example of one. And this is from, a case that I was an investor in, and it cost me more than $3 million in equity, more than $5 million in assets. And as another person that lost as a result of that case was the founder, I think it's the founder of the Jacuzzi brand. And they had $20 million invested down in this same big land development project. But the government prosecutors brought them in and I shouldn't say government prosecutors, because it was a civil investigation, but the government attorneys brought this lady in who is like older than 70 years old. And they start questioning her about her finances and why she put so much money into this development project. And she had, like I said, she had $20 million invested down there. Well, as a result of that, as a result of her investment, the government threatened her and said, you could be potentially liable for the entire project, which is $140 million. She had to walk away from tens of millions of dollars in order to preserve the possibility of her being jointly and severally liable for the entire problem. Government investigations are really not about helping anybody there except really the prosecutor, or I keep calling them prosecutors, but they're not prosecutors, they're government attorneys. We just have a lot of problems associated, in my opinion, with our nation's commitment to mass incarceration. The outgrowth now is with government investigations, and those frequently lead to government prosecutions, as happened with Lori Loughlin, which is what we really started this video about. And sadly, sometimes people that should not be going into the criminal justice system at all are brought in, and they accept deals because the government is really so heavy-handed that it threatens to take away everything. It threatens years of loss of liberty. It threatens, all of your earnings that you've had forever, and the pain can be so damaging that people don't find a way to get through it. And as a result, they take a deal like she took, and she'll be going to prison for 2 months. And for what? Really, is it really worth going to the prison because she wanted to help her daughters? I mean, I don't know the particulars of that case, but is prison really the answer? I mean, when we make overuse of our nation's prison system, every single human being is vulnerable. Every time you're driving down the road at 67, 69 miles an hour, that can start a government investigation with a police officer pulling you over, and he asks you how fast were you going. Oh, I was going the speed limit. Well, that's a federal crime. A lot of people don't understand that. Title 18, 1001. Anytime you lie to a law enforcement officer, that is a federal crime, and it's punishable by up to 5 years in prison. So, we can go back to those words of Jesus: let he who is without sin cast the first stone. LeBron, if you're going to call people out and make them feel bad when they're already down just because other people are being oppressed, that's not the answer. The answer is to learn, what can we do as a society to improve the system? What can we do to make more people aware of the wretchedness of a system that incarcerates more people per capita than any place else on earth? And that's a far better use of our voice. And that's what we do at Prison Professors. We can't change the laws, but we can help people understand them. We can help people understand how to avoid being brought in to a government investigation. We can help people understand, if they are, what they can do to minimize the struggles and the challenges. So really, that's just really what I wanted to share from New York City. You can see the beautiful skyline. If you're living in one of those buildings out there, you're very likely running a large business. Make sure that you're doing everything possible to avoid a government investigation, which can very easily lead to a government prosecution and the forfeiture of all those assets. I am Michael Santos with Prison Professors, and we hope that you will subscribe to the program. We hope that you will help us spread this program, because we use it to teach and inspire people in prison, and we use it to educate people in a manner that will help them enjoy their life and reach their highest potential, but to do so without interference from government investigators.